point, I just started to, and I think this happened, I think it was during Jillian's illness that I started to just realize that I had to live in a way where it was more of I get to instead of I have to. Um, and you can't do that every day, not all day, every day. But I think if you wake up with the mindset of, instead of I have to get up to do this, I have to go to work, I have to clean my house, I have to, and I say I get to. How great is it that I get up today? How wonderful that I get to go to a job where I can provide in some way, or I have a home to clean. And like I said, not all day, every day. You're not going to have that mindset. But if you can come back to that, I think and that had to happen for me during Jillian's because there wasn't always I had no idea what each day would bring. And so I had to do that. And I had so many eyes looking at me to be the one that knew what to do. And if this plan fell through, what we were going to do next. And so when you have that, I think it makes you perform in a way that's like, okay, we'll figure this out. And, but again, that's again, you lose that. And that's where we land.
Today's conversation is one I have been looking forward to for such a long time. I'm sitting down with Jen Miller, someone who was part of my very first retreat in Brown County, and someone whose story has stayed with me since the beginning of time. Jen's journey through her child's cancer diagnosis, the lasting side effects, and the ongoing health challenges within her family have reshaped so much of how they live and love and move through the world. But what stands out most to me isn't just what she's been through, but how she moves through it. This is a conversation about resilience, yes, but also about the parts of people and stories that not everyone always sees. The long days, the quiet shifts, and the way life changes, yet keeps us moving forward. Jen, I am so grateful that you are here with me today.
So I have to tell you, I was thinking a lot about this and you and how to best introduce you to our guests. And your story is one that carries impact and a lot of history. Uh, and I know a lot of mama emotional heart is involved. Um, so with that, I felt like the best way is to just ask you how you feel you could best introduce or give a glimpse to our listeners about you and your family and what you've walked through and what we
No,
have
of
with us
course. Well,
today.
first, thank you. I appreciate you. I've looked forward to this, so I'm glad to be here. Yeah, so I'm a mom of four. I think that's always my start. So I'm a mom of four. But my caregiving role specifically started in my teens. So I was kind of thinking about this morning, like, kind of what is a caregiver? Like, what does that really mean? And when does that start? And aren't we all that at some point? And I don't know. So I was kind of thinking about that before we got started. And I thought mine started, I think, in my late teens with my dad. And then, because he got cancer when I was in high school. And then that's kind of when the journey of caregiving started for me. And then that was caregiving until he passed, and that was when I was in college, and it was just a few days after my 19th birthday. So I think that is when I realized, like, okay, the world's like pretty big, and I'm an only child, so um, I don't think until I got to college I even realized that how big the world was. And so when I came home, my dad had passed, and then I kind of became a caregiver to my mom, who that was not expected at all because the loss of my dad just kind of catapulted me into that. So, anyway, all that to say, I think I've been a caregiver most of my life. And then with Jillian, which is kind of how I think our journey starts to intertwine, is we become a club of a club we don't want to be part of, and that's Cancer Moms. And so my strong adult caregiving became really, really, really strong when Jillian got sick at the age of 2. And I was already, I already had 3 healthy kids. Jillian is our youngest. And so I think that is when my kind of my life became caregiving and really only caregiving at that point. Jillian's journey of getting to remission was long, and so um, that's really when I think I just lost any um, bit of self at that point. You kind of do that just as being a mom sometimes, being a woman sometimes. And so then, that's when I think I really started to equip myself with all of the tools that I thought I needed to manage each day because I didn't even know what each day was going to look like. Like it could be the highest of high and the lowest of low. Jillian was diagnosed 2 days before Christmas, so it was like, um, you know, cancer, and then Santa Claus is coming to town. So it was just like, I mean, it was crazy. And so, and how do you do that? The dichotomy of that is, but that's been my life forever, is the dichotomy of graduating and then your dad passes away. And so that's kind of just always how it's been. So I think that's how I learned how to do the roller coaster and ride it as well as I could. And sometimes I think you just can't do that anymore. And so that's where I see your post often for different things. And when I saw the journey of Rooted. And so then when it became what it's starting to be and is going to be, I was like, oh my gosh. And then, just like life always happens, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I need this. This is great. And I was in a point in my life where I was like, okay, this makes sense. I can do this. Like, I've got this time. I'm not really working right now. We were going into homeschooling, and Josh was, everything was just like, okay, this is going to work. And then, nope, not going to work. Because my husband had some really significant health issues, and then we had to abruptly move, and all of this happens like we are literally moving during the dates of the retreat. And so I'm like, and I reached out to you and I was like, Vicky, there's just like no way. There's no possible way. Like, I cannot leave my family in the thick of this. And so, um, yeah. And so you were like, I understand, and you do what's best for you, and I'm here, and what can I do, and whatever I needed. And I felt that, and I knew that, and I didn't feel like any decision I made was right or wrong. But I fought with it up until the minute I walked out the door. Because I was like, how can you, like, literally, you're going to leave in the middle of, but then my family was uber supportive and got to the point where they told me, if you don't go, Mom, we're going to be mad. So then I knew, okay, everybody sees that it's time to refuel. And so,
You know, you have touched, I'm gonna pause for just 1 second because you have touched on so many things that I will help unpack. For our guests who are watching who have maybe never walked through something that they've been through, to our guests who are watching who are nodding their heads saying, I get it, I feel it, I'm there, to maybe those of us that have walked it but are past it. So I'm gonna peel back a few of those layers before we go further. And what I'd really love to know, and actually this came to me as you were sharing your caregiving story with your parents, to be honest, because that's something that many of us end up in that role far later in life than when you're a kiddo going off to college, right? So all of a sudden you take a whole lot on your shoulders. Uh, and, thinking back to that time, can you think of what people from the outside who are looking in, who all, in most circumstances want help, but don't know what to do, you know, can you think back to that time? And I know it was a while ago, but what do you think people assumed but didn't really fully understand about that walk for you? Because again, I think a lot of people who watch this are people who are walking alongside of somebody who is a caretaker, and we think we know how they feel or we want to do the right things, yet often we don't even know where to begin, and that often causes people to pull back, or people to turn away because they don't know what to say. Can you think to that time, either then or even with Jillian, that you know people are kind of assuming they know what's really going on, yet do
Right.
they really?
And I'll be honest, I think the answer is just that they don't. And so asking, just saying, how are you? Are you okay? I love you. But I think what happens is there's always recommendations or tips or what people think is best, and that is great in time. But I think in the beginning, in the thick of it, you just want someone to hear you and to see, okay, they aren't well. Like this, like, and I think sometimes I was always taught, like, you get up and you do the things and you put on your makeup and you do your hair, whatever makes you feel good, and you keep it moving. And I think that's fair, but I think that's also not a badge of honor sometimes. I think you have to let people help. And there's humility and there's a humbleness to that. But I think that took time. That took a little bit of time. I don't know that I knew that at 19. But in a way, looking back at it, I did. I not in the same way. I had a close friend who was my roommate, and there were times. I mean, so I was I was rushing for a sorority in college. My dad had helped me get my packets together. It was a big thing, and he passed on a Tuesday. His services were on a Friday, and I rushed on Saturday, and I got into the house because, and that was like, now I think about it and I'm like, was that? But of course it was, because that was my next step to get to. We did it. I got there. And I've just always been that way. But I think sometimes you have to pause. And so that friend saw that I needed that pause. And there was actually an evening that, like, she just laid in bed with me, just held me in bed. And that was it. There was no talk, there was no conversation. She knew that I needed that. I see you, you're working hard, but this is a lot. And so I think it's just those people that see you.
What a
It
beautiful
was.
moment, the fact
I
that you
do,
still
and
remember
I always will.
all of
Yeah,
and and I'm sure have also served very much as a compass in your life, because you were in a moment where you saw what made an impact. And I think it's human nature, and I'm guilty of it myself. Yet with experiences, it's like we learn through our own experiences also. But I think it's human nature to want to be able to say the right thing, or try to alleviate the worry, or show up with that fix, when sometimes it's just being present and being okay not needing to say anything. Uh, yes. And also, I know I've learned through many of my life experiences, people just want to do what right and well and love you. And so also knowing on the flip side of, man, they're trying
absolutely.
so hard, but
That's
this is
right.
hard. This
And I
is
think on the
hard
other side, you have
stuff.
to give grace to, and everyone doesn't know the right thing to do. Not everyone has walked your path. So, you have to
Right.
give grace on this side too, that not everyone knows what to do to help. And it's okay to sometimes say, that's not what I needed. This is what I need. And if they love you, they'll know, oh, thank you. Thank you for giving me the direction of what you needed. So, yeah. I think that's okay to give yourself permission
Right.
to say, I need help in whatever capacity that is.
Right. Can you think of a time, a pivotal time that you made a pivotal change as a parent or as a caregiver after a moment, you know, that was um, life changing for you, either, with your walk with your parents or even with Jillian, where you saw, okay, this is life as I know it, and this is how I need to start showing up, or this is how I need to be able to carry this differently. Was there any one thing that took you to that moment, or was it step after step after step of many years?
Hmm, wow, that's a really good question. Um, I feel like my quick answer is it's step after step, but
Hmm.
I know there's moments. One I just mentioned. Um, Another one I know I mentioned at the retreat was kind of the chocolate milk story where
True.
Jensen, one of my kiddos, made me kind of pause because of a feeling she was having, and I that intentionally made me parent different from that moment forward. I have four kids, and so it made me, you know, this, you know, you have four kids, you know, they're four individual people, they have four individual personalities, but sometimes time is time, and you have to clump time, you know, and you have to work and you have to be a friend and a mom and all the things. And so I learned at that point in time that I had to parent each kid intentionally very differently, and do individual time and individual, just very individual. And I think I knew that, but I think at that point I just was like, oh, okay, you've missed this. You have to give each one their own individual time.
Well, and that's where, as parents, we can give ourselves grace also, right? Because often, you know, as I have always said, you worry about your sick child, as your healthy children, as much as your sick child. And that's a cadence we have to learn to step into as parents and be able to hold all of our children, yet it looks differently based on ages and circumstances and where they are in their developmental ages. Uh, and that's not something that happens
Right.
overnight.
It's true. And I think too, at some point, I just started to, and I think this happened. I think it was during Jillian's illness that I started to just realize that I had to live in a way where it was more of I get to instead of I have to. Um, and that's, you can't do that every day, not all day, every day. But I think if you wake up with the mindset of, instead of I have to get up to do this, I have to go to work, I have to clean my house, I have to, and I say I get to. How great is it that I get up today? How wonderful that I get to go to a job where I can provide in some way, or I have a home to clean. And like I said, not all day, every day. You're not going to have that mindset. But if you can come back to that, I think and that had to happen for me during Jillian's because there wasn't always I had no idea what each day would bring. And so I had to do that. And I had so many eyes looking at me to be the one that knew what to do. And if this plan fell through, what we were going to do next. And so when you have that, I think it makes you perform in a way that's like, okay, we'll figure this out. And, but again, that's again, you lose that. And that's where we land with you and why rooted was just necessary for me at the time when I got to the retreat.
Thank Well, and again, you just keep touching on so many pivotal things that we all experience as parents, whether we're walking through crisis or not, to be honest, of just, what an example we have every single day to be an example to our kids on how we are. handling what's coming our way, and how we need to learn how to give ourselves grace and find that pause. You've mentioned pause a number of times, if I can't wait to touch on that a little bit more. But those are all such day-to-day lived experiences. And we can talk at our kids all day long, but our kids are watching us and maybe not always hearing this, as I can
Mhm.
say as a mama of 4, right? Yet they're watching us, and to be able to show up with that opportunity of, "I've gotta give myself a little grace today," or, "Ooh, I can do this maybe a little bit differently." Through I always say I still my kids, my baby just flew the nest
Mhm.
this year to college, but I still say I'm
Oh,
learning from my kids every
absolutely.
day.
I
Yeah. And there's no do-over button in all of this, but there sure is a do again and maybe do it, differently or with experience. Uh, but more than anything, what I hear so much coming from your message is that opportunity to give yourself some grace. And, yours was the chocolate milk story. And, I remember mine. I still remember it to this day. And it was shortly after Luke was diagnosed and our world was flipped upside down. And I remember it was my turn to be home with my 4 other kids that morning, and I had no touch in what was going on anywhere in the world. Yet my oldest came down in junior high, came down and was eating breakfast, and I took a stab in the dark and I said, "So how'd you do on your test the other day?" Because I felt that disconnected from everything else. We were in such a state of crisis. Yet I remember it so well. It was that morning that I kind of gave myself a little wake up call of, you also have 4 other kids to help navigate through this. And he thankfully prayerfully did have a test that he had that he could talk to me about, but again, I was grasping, but I remember that so well thinking, because it was one of those things, and for obvious reasons, the world had been flipped upside down, but it was such a pivotal moment of, "Hey, mama, you've got other ones at home too to nurture and to care and to love for." And, granted that takes time when you've been handed a big one to find that rhythm again. Uh, and, I think you've done a beautiful job of of the ebb and flow and finding your way, and knowing A, that your kids are watching, but B, how they saw when you're considering the retreat. They saw, "Hey, mom,
Yeah,
you deserve
they did.
this."
And it was, yeah, it was collective. It was my coworkers, my husband, my kids, and it was just like, which of course makes you also sad because you're like, okay, everyone does see, but then it also was like, thank you. Thank you for giving me the
Yep.
the gentle push to be like, yep, you're right. I got to go.
Tell me what that was like for you to step away for a weekend into a space that you're unfamiliar with women you don't know, in a time of really ongoing crisis in your world. What was that like for you?
Um, it's that dichotomy of amazing and scary. What am I doing? This is crazy. What's happening? Why am I doing this? Unraveling. It was that. It was that, like I said, and literally until I we pulled up.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was that.
Well, and I think of you a lot and the bravery that it takes. And to be honest, that was one of the drivers to creating this podcast, because I recognize, it's hard to step away, period, as a woman. We put a lot on our shoulders. Yet it's really hard to step away as a woman in crisis with her children, or perhaps that is, helping keep a lot of um, wheels in motion that we tend to do if we have a child with medical complexities. It's hard. And I realized, even leading up to that very first retreat, that while the weekend gatherings are instrumental because it really does allow you that time to step away and find your pause and find your community and your breath, I realized the day-to-day lives that we still have to navigate when we are back in home at home, that doesn't stop in between retreats, so that was truly that drive behind starting to create this podcast, is to create that bridge of support and community, and to meet people like you and, our other guests that can do that system
Yeah,
of support.
and that's important. I think that's so special and important because I do think through the journey of caregiving, or specifically for me, pediatric cancer with Jillian, I do think that is a big part that you have communities or networks that are built, or those those bridges that get you to the next phase of whatever it is. But then it seems like it just goes away and it disappears, and you either maybe talk on Facebook, or there's a couple of texts every now and then, but I think you build that such a connection sometimes, and like I said, forever grateful, forever changed. And I think you have those moments in life, and unfortunately sometimes tragedy is what brings those like people together,
Mhm.
and sometimes you don't have
Right.
that. And I think it's amazing that you're doing this, because I mean, like I told you the other morning, I was listening to you and Debbie because I was like, I needed a moment of pause. I needed to connect to something. I was looking for something to listen to and just kind of make me like, okay, you got to breathe for a second, because I've had a couple of recent health stuff going on, and I just needed to kind of regroup. And I was like, okay. And I saw, and you popped
Mhm.
up, and I was like, oh, well, there you go. There's my listen. And so it did exactly, once again, exactly what you intended it to do.
Wonderful. Well, it's big on my heart, and when something like that lands on my heart, it just makes me realize, the need for us to come together. And, as we say, we're better together. Yet it also, in at least in my experience, it helps to bring down those walls of isolation a little bit, which was such a drive for the retreat, is to be able to be in community with women who understand whether you want to share your story or whether you want to talk about your story the whole time. And we have a little bit of everything, and there is no right, no wrong, other than, you are surrounded by women who have walked through it. And I think there's a really big comfort in finding your people. Uh, because I don't know about you, but I know many of my experiences became very isolating because it's hard to connect. It's hard to find, uh, you know, your normal
Yes.
looks
You
different.
feel like people are kind of
Uh,
tiring
and
of what your normal is.
right. And we say all the time, man, we would not want to put our normal onto anyone ever. Yet it's real easy to kind of go maybe a little too inward to protect, because looking at what other normals are, it's hard to relate. And so that's why I felt so passionate about bringing the space together, was to give women that opportunity to just walk alongside of each other, and the warriors that we are, and to be able to stand together in strength, knowing, man, our hearts have been flipped upside down and again, yet we're still
Absolutely. And it
standing.
was exactly that.
And
It was exactly that.
uh,
It,
mm,
from the moment, I think from the moment that we walked in alone,
mm,
before we had to all come together, I knew from that moment that,
mm,
not that I didn't already know, that your thought process was intentional to every, every single step of the way. But I knew at that moment, I was like, nobody does that. Usually there's like somebody greeting you, somebody there to,
Mm,
there's the group, and so I thought,
mm,
okay, okay. But I knew that you got it. So that made me no
mm.
no. And so, you know,
And
yeah,
that's really interesting because I had thought through those beginning steps of checking in at the desk, and I really played with that idea of, uh, do I want a table down there to greet, or and I purposefully thought I want women to come in their own space and on their own cadence and get to their room in their own breath and be able to slowly fold into what was to come. And, and trying to weigh all of the emotions because that takes strength to again walk into an unfamiliar place. And I so thank you for saying that. It just it was a lot of we really wanted to be able to meet women where they were, yet also help expand that capacity of doing the hard things, but also knowing that you're held and that you're loved and
right.
that you're greeted.
And
Uh
once again, it's like, I know the word keeps coming back, but the dichotomy of it is I came in alone, and then I thought about it, but I left with a army of people that literally walked me and shut me, you know. So that was the trip. I came in alone, soft, scared, having no idea what was going to happen. I just knew that I was going to enjoy some time with you, and and that's all I knew. And then and I had seen postings and of everybody, and just like a very brief, okay, this is who we're going to get to meet and hang out with, but no idea what that was going to bring and what we would get to experience, and all the way from quiet walks to sound to meditation to yoga to, I mean, all the things. And it was exceptional from the time I walked in till the time you guys walked me out. So
oh, it's so special to know. Tell me how you experienced or welcomed in, it was the facility and moderators that join us at these retreats are uh, selected on purpose and for purpose. And, to bring in and introduce different modalities that maybe people are unfamiliar with and, different, as I say, to equip our toolbox. So, unfortunately, we know life can get really hard, and either we've experienced it or we're in it now, or who knows what might be coming, down the road for us. Yet, how can we walk through that maybe with tools that we're able to equip ourselves with? So that's the whole premise of these retreats are to just help experience and maybe put a little breath back into your lungs and send you home with maybe a few different modalities that you can work or integrate into your day. How did you experience that throughout the weekend? But then how has it been like once you've been home? Have you been able to reflect back to things that you learned or experienced maybe for the first time, or maybe you're a pro at some of it? What's that look
yeah,
like for you?
so I think besides some of the sound work and um, the instruments and things that I had done and touched on uh, almost everything we had done. So like I had been hiking, I had done some singing drum, I had done some yoga, but nothing, very surface things. Nothing I had made a regimen of, or um, had been part of my daily life. And while on the retreat, I enjoyed everything. I took something away from every part of it. Um, and yes, I have. I do daily yoga, and I have every day since. the retreat by myself on my porch. um, and I do it for sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 20 minutes. Um, I don't make that an issue. I do it. Um, and I'm more intentional with my breath work. It's something that I've always done and something I've always had to use, but I'm more intentional with it. Excuse me. I've had more, a little more knowledge as to what worked for me, what I'm interested in. So yeah, absolutely. 100%. I've taken things with me that I've used every day since.
Have there been moments since the retreat that you've had to hit hit the stop button, not just the pause button, but the stop button because things are getting heavy or things are coming at you too fast that then you almost give yourself that comfort of, wait, I know I can do this and I know I'm equipped to do the hard things. Has there been any moments like that since the
Yes.
retreat?
Yeah, so when I got back from the retreat, we had to finish the move. So I had to do it a few times during the move, to just center myself back to you just came from where you came from and remember the things you learned. And I did. And I pulled some of the moments and some of the memories, um, some of the presentations that were done by some of the facilitators. Excuse me. Um, yeah, some of the visuals that were made during, which were, of course, the universe. They were already, some of them, things that were already important to me that were just like, I mean, of course, we're talking about sunflowers. They're behind me. So, I mean, so there were already things that happened during the retreat that were mentioned that I reminded me already of either, like my bedroom was in sunflowers. My first bedspread in my first bedroom was sunflowers. So the memories can be pulled together of, oh, that's such a comforting memory for a multitude of reasons. Or, I saw an eagle on the retreat. So there's things that I see that will forever remind me of that weekend. And so even if unintentionally, I have to take that pause because I'm like, oh, that smell of lemons reminds me of my candle. So, I mean, it's like there's things from that weekend that will forever, I mean, that will happen forever. So whether it's meant to happen because I'm like, okay, whew, this is a tough one, or if it's just because I'm taking a walk and, I see another eagle, I'm like, oh, because that actually happened at Eagle Creek. We were walking and I saw an eagle and I was like, I mean, so, things that the universe I feel are bringing to me for whatever reason, um, during that weekend or after will ever, I mean, forever remind me of that weekend and things that people said and the relationships that were made and
Yeah.
the weather we had and
How
all
did
the things.
we had sun,
We
we
did.
had snow.
We did.
Yeah.
No, we
Yeah.
had it all. Welcome to Indiana.
How did your family receive you when you came home? Did they notice you? I often say I feel lighter. Physically feel lighter when I do things that take care of myself. Emotionally, I feel lighter. I know it presents differently in all of us. Were they able to kind of stand back and watch mom for a little bit and be able to see what really transpired for her over the weekend?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I came home
Mm.
in my my hug. And so I
Uh,
explain, I mean, and that instantly is beautiful. So that instantly got the attention of, oh, mom, visually. And then I got to explain several things over the weekend. And, but absolutely, I mean, my husband, my coworkers, I went back to work and, um, my coworkers were like, yeah, there's a sparkle there that was missing. It's a little dulled. We see it. Um, so yeah, absolutely. And then it's funny because Jillian sometimes, like, if I'll if I'll mention certain things, or if I'll say, like you and I have had a conversation or something that comes up, or, our bracelets, something will be mentioned. um, that now she's like, now is that something you learned on the retreat? And I'm like, yes, yes, it is. Yes.
Well, and again, what a beautiful way as a parent to lead by example, right? Of doing the work and kids, this is hard for me to go, and they're trying to push you out the door, but you still go. And, I could feel that back and forth, tug on you. And, that's just normal regardless, let alone if you're walking through a hard season. So again, for you to be an example of that kind of strength that no, this weekend's for me. Uh, and even though this is really hard for me right now, but then for them to see what comes out of it with you, I think is just such a special gift you can give back to them. Uh, and I don't know. I think as parents, as moms, you know, often and even more so moms that are walking through medical challenges with our kids, we get really consumed in keeping everybody's head above water. Yet sometimes because of that, we start drowning a little. So just being able to identify, hey, mom needs to catch your breath, and that's okay, giving ourselves permission to, to go take care of us so we can step back into the game, healthier, stronger, more grounded. Uh, and and I wish we could fix things, right? But we can't fix it. But we can learn how to show up uh, with a little more steadiness. And yeah, you just was such a beautiful walking and talking
Oh, thank
example of
you.
that.
I appreciate that. Right back at you.
You, I'm dying to know. Now I know, I truly know you loved every session. So thank you. Because again, they were curated definitely on purpose. And it was so fun to watch from the outside, everybody just absorbing and enjoying. So I know that you loved all of it, which I'm very thankful for. Can you share with me what was your all time favorite, this blew my socks off kind of moment?
Okay. Um, there were, oh my gosh, that's tough. That's tough. I
I
mean, it
know.
really is. Um,
Well, and I preface it because I know you really did enjoy
I mean, I
everything.
genuinely did. I'm
Uh,
really trying to, gosh, it's so hard. The quiet of the hike was intentional, and all of it was intentional, but it was intentional quiet, which was a forced quiet at first. Um, and then it fell right into no one had a need to talk because there was this invisible wire going to each one of us that we were just like walking along with each other and away from each other at the same time. No one had to talk. You could see who was gravitating towards the water, who went towards the rocks, who was looking up at the trees, who was so that gave me like we during the talking you had to look at each person and what they were saying and who was laughing and whose moment it was and whose presentation it was, and but during the quiet you had your own like who were you going to watch? Were you going to watch anybody? Were you watching nature? Were you thinking about what you were thinking about? So that was like that was time to your own brain to make up, what do I do with this? What do I take in here? So that was probably um and then our last day, our last morning. Yeah. Yeah, our last morning I think made each of us see each other very differently.
yes, and to unpack both of those just a little bit. The walking and mindfulness hiking, that had a lot of people scared because it's
It
hard
was,
to be
yeah. And we
quiet,
were giddy. Like
you
you
know,
said, I think
where
at some point we were all like extra that morning. Like we were all feeling it, you know? And so I think that, and then we were like, "Ooh, we're going outside. It's kind of sunny. It's kind of warm. Now be quiet." And so at first I think it was kind of like, oh my gosh, what do we do? Um, but then, like I said, within seconds, that was all gone.
so share with me if someone is listening or watching this who is in a hard season that you're all too familiar with. What is it that you would like them to be able to take away, either from what you've learned or your experience as a very experienced mama who has walked through the trenches and still is? What is it that you would like them to know from you?
Um, well, I mean, I think that I hope that it's a little bit of what we've talked about today is that showing up is important, whether that be for our kids or for ourselves, um, and knowing that that's okay. Um, and I think it's kind of cliche, but where there's a will, there's a way. And I think that it's that simple. If you know that there's a will to take care of your family, to get a job, to whatever it is, that there's a way. There's a way you'll figure that out. And we all have that. We all have that. It takes time to get there sometimes, but we all have that. And to reach out when you need help, when you don't have that way, and when your cup is empty, when your tank is empty, it's okay to reach out to whomever, to your community, to who gets you, or to your family, whoever gets you. And if they don't get you, that's okay too. I think that just letting people know that you need help, that there's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. It's okay.
When I think there's a beautiful strength that comes with being able to raise your hand and say, I need help. And yeah, it's not a weakness. And I know it took me a while to figure that out. You know, I was the doer. I was always the one helping. And all of a sudden roles reversed and I was the one needing help. And, so wherever you fall on that spectrum to understand that, uh, you know, giving yourself that time and that permission to really see, okay, what's my body telling me? What do I need? So you can then fully give back to those who need you. Uh, and you know, that's a cape of strength, not any, um, anything
It
but.
is because, like I said in the beginning, I think that for women, it's often a badge of honor to do, get it done. Stay. How much can you get done in a day? How many jobs can you have? How many things can you get done? How many friendships can you have? How many hobbies can you have? And I think that we gotta pause. It's okay to just to not stay number one in every single race. Like you literally can do everything, but you can't do it all at the same time. And sometimes I think it's okay to know that. Like, life, there's ebbs and flows to it. And I think that you just have to know that this day will end. And by the grace, you'll wake up in the morning and you'll get to do it all over again. So I think that when you can genuinely just appreciate sometimes it's not day to day, sometimes it's hour to hour, sometimes it's minute to minute, second to second. It's not always day to day. And I think that's okay too, to realize that sometimes you're not living day to day, especially in the crisis and in the dark and in the hard. But it's okay to just second to second. If that's all you can do, second to second is okay.
That's so interesting because I go back 20 years thinking of our diagnosis with cancer, and And truly, I remember it for our family, it was making it from one meal to the next meal, and that is the
Yes,
only bandwidth as a mom that I could do,
absolutely.
is trying to get from
Absolutely.
breakfast to lunch, and sometimes it was breakfast to the mid-morning snack to lunch, because
That's right.
thinking of anything more than that tiny little bite was overwhelming for me because it was
That's right.
so big, and
Yes.
and I had control over nothing,
Yes.
and, timelines and timestamps and, all of
Yes.
these things were getting piled on quicker than I could could try to manage, and so,
Absolutely.
but it took time for me to get okay with thinking, "Okay, right now, it's just 2-hour blocks,"
Yeah.
and
Absolutely.
and you learn to start living like that for us, it was for years. I know for you, it was
And I was
years.
just getting ready to say, and I think forever you almost take a little bit of that with you that, like that there's a little bit of that that never goes away. Like you hear sometimes of people like, well, we're planning this a year from now, and I don't think I'm a year from now type of person ever again. So I think that, and but that's okay. I can, as long as we can sometimes make it to tomorrow. So, and that's not to say that it's not okay to plan ahead or to make plans or dreams or whatever that is that's your comfort zone. But for me, I think my new comfort zone since Jillian's diagnosis, which is no longer new, but it's my forever now, I think, is to always live a little more in the moment and a little more intentionally, knowing that, at any moment, because we all know that. I mean, we all know at any moment anything can change. But when you see it, when you see that on a regular day where the weather is the same, it's 2 days before Christmas, it's exactly what it's supposed to be, and by the evening, it's your worst nightmare. Well, that can be any day. But I think what that does to you is just makes you realize that you have to live every day in the moment. And I know that sounds cliche, but you do.
Well, and I think it's a beautiful example of how a diagnosis or a medical complexity or an accident, you name it, can completely change your view and the lens in which you see the world. And at the same time, and I know this took me a while to settle in and understand, but at the same time, it can also become your biggest blessing.
Oh, yes. I often use the phrase of that Jillian's, the worst day of our life. I can't imagine some of the things that just wouldn't have happened. And that's crazy to say because, of course, I mean, in a moment, I would change that day. But then I think of the avalanche of things and who she is and the empathy and the sympathy and the mindset that she has and who she's become, partly because of her strength and what she's learned from her diagnosis and challenges. I think, like, what is that? Like, you can't explain that. Of course you would trade that day in an instant, but I also wouldn't trade who she is and some of the experiences we've had because of that day.
It's really hard, and I think it takes a unique and special person to be able to hold both of those. And I remember shortly in the beginning of Luke's diagnosis, somebody saying, "Oh, the blessings you're going to see," and that was just that was more than my head could comprehend because of where I was in the crisis. And so I think just being open and open to receive just the things that are given to us to help us walk through some of the most challenging, frightening moments of our lives. And to be able to hold that. And again, I don't think there's a parent out there that would say, "Oh, I'm I'm thankful for this." I say all the time, if I only could have done it for him, uh, yet not wanting to lose all the things that have happened because of it. So it's a real hard idea to hold, and I think unless you walk through it or are walking through it and you can start seeing all of those, relationships like you that are building and who your children are becoming because of really hard things that you can't learn in textbook in school. Uh, and those moments are little seeds that are planted throughout the really horrible, awful, painstaking days. And there's both in there, and that's
Absolutely.
hard.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is. And it's a, like I said, it's, yes, it's a wonderful thing and it's an awful thing at the same time. But it has brought my family, me, Jillian, and it's not just that caregiving experience. I mean, as we spoke about, I mean, the same thing has happened in other experiences where the network of people you meet that have that like experience, whatever that is, and in this case, we're speaking of our experience with pediatric cancer, but whatever that is, and for us all at the retreat, it wasn't pediatric cancer, and for me there was a little comfort in that too, that that it wasn't all just my experience, because our experience does become a little baseline the same, even though it's not the same. There's that same history of what we're all here together for, and that wasn't the case at the retreat. It was just, there's a little bit of a broken in there that we all just are trying to figure out how to manage and how to help each other work out.
I think there's comfort in knowing we all are walking into a room carrying some bags. And we're just there to try to learn how to carry them stronger, and because, our story is our story. Uh, and there's no one story that's worse or that's better, or it doesn't make yours less valued. It's just if it's true to you, it's yours to own. And so, okay, how can I walk with it, and still be able to show up for my family and raise good humans when we're in the hard seasons. And you certainly are just such a beautiful, shining example of a mom, of a human, of a wife, of a friend, uh, because you've shown us what hard is, but you have also shown what's possible to carry, uh, and to honor the pause. And you said it a lot, and it certainly has become a part of my days. I was forced to find it in a very difficult way. Uh, but boy, is there peace and comfort that comes in being able to find your pause. Uh,
I agree.
and
I
I'm
agree.
so
It's necessary. It's necessary for us all.
honored.
It is, and especially today. You know, the world is a hectic place, no matter where you are, and I think it's necessary right now for everybody to just take a breath
I,
and to take that pause, to take the moment to just think that it's okay. We're going to be okay.
we're gonna be okay. Yes.
We're going to be okay.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I adore you.
I I likewise. I adore ditto.
Jen, such a meaningful conversation. I am so grateful for the way you've shared not only the big moments, but those in between spaces, the parts that often go unseen. What you've walked through and continue to walk through has clearly reshaped so much of your life, but it's also revealed such a depth of strength and perspective that I know will resonate with so many people who are listening. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And for those listening, we will be holding space for you too. wherever this conversation may have met you today. I'm so glad you're here.